Many years ago, I lived close to the university, and one morning I was giving a lecture on thermodynamics for the students. I entered the lecture hall, and there were a number of students, just like you. I started writing equations on the blackboard, and I started giggling that girls 14-year-old, you know how they are. And I looked around, I could not see anything strange. So finally I asked, why are you laughing? Well, you still have your pajama on. And, well, the show must go on. So 2 hours I was standing there writing equations in my pajama. After that, I went home to change. It was a lecture that I will never forget, and not the students either. But I am not sure they remember what I told them. I once was an atheist, and there was something that changed my mind, and that was in my early teenagers. This man, Knut Lundmark, he was professor of astronomy at the University of Lund in Sweden. And he often was talking about astronomy on radio. Actually, he was the one who first proved that the universe is more than our galaxy, that all the other galaxies also are like ours. So he expanded the universe by at least 10,000 times from what was known earlier. Well, he was a brilliant talker, gave brilliant speeches. And one day, when I was listening to him, he said, there is something strange with the Genesis story in the Bible. Because what is told there is essentially what we know about the development of the universe from the Big Bang to now. And how could people several thousand years ago know that? When we have needed big and expensive instruments to get that information. And the only conclusion, of course, was that there has to be a God who put that information to the one who wrote the Genesis story in the Bible. Even in the translations, one can see many of the things that we know about the development of the universe. What one can see differs between different translations. So I have stated here what I can see in the Swedish translation. Unfortunately, I have been forced to have Swedish here because there isn't something wrong with the computer, so I could not change to Spanish. Anyway, the first thing stated in the Bible is that time starts, and that is easily seen from the Swedish translation. And then the Bible talks about the creation of heavens and the earth. And I reason something like that. Several thousand of years ago, heaven and earth was the only thing known. So what the Bible probably tries to say is that the universe had a start. fourth thing noted in the Bible is that originally the universe was in a state of chaos. And the first event described in the Bible after creation is that the universe was filled with light. Similarly, the first thing we can directly observe when we look out into the universe is the flash of light that appeared when the atoms were formed. Then the universe had an age of 300,000 years, and it was suddenly filled with a blinding light. The Bible also talks about that after that light, the universe became dark again. This is what could be seen from the Swedish translation, and that was enough to convince me that it has a supernatural origin. So I became a Christian. Then, after some years, I was wondering, am I going to be a pastor? I could not come to a decision. And one late evening, I was sitting alone in the cathedral of Göteborg. It was totally dark, except for the spotlights to the altar. And I was sitting there praying and thinking, should I be a pastor? And I could not come to a decision. Finally, I asked right out into the air, do you want me to be a pastor? Within a second, I was surrounded by love and warmth. And I heard a voice saying, no, you are to study science, and then you will know how to prove that I am. And then the root of my life was obvious. So I started studying mathematics, chemistry, theoretical physics at the university, and became a research student and so on. And all the time I have had this project of proving the existence of God as one of my research subjects. My research at present is, like you can see there, origin of life, evolution, and one strange thing in physics, time appears to go in a specific direction, from past via now to the future. Why does time go in a specific direction? This is one of my research subjects. And I show some of my tools here. Here something happened with my pictures. Well, there should have been 3 pictures here. They have disappeared. During my free time, I have 3 hobbies. I am a hobby pilot and owner of a small aircraft. I like sailing and have a small sailing boat with which I sail in the archipelago at the Swedish west coast. And I like singing. I'm a tenor, being member of 2 choirs, the church choir where I live and acquire about 120 kilometers away. The research on faith and science has so far resulted in 2 books, and the first of them has now been translated by Susanna into Spanish. And the purpose of this book is to prove that God exists. But it does not tell anything about who is the God. Is it the God of the Bible? Is it Brahma? Is it Zeus? Or any other? That is the purpose of the second book. It proves that the God that is proven in this book is exactly the God of the Bible, and that all other so-called sacred scriptures are pure human fantasies. What I am going to do today is to show you some of the many footprints that God has put into the universe for us to know that He is. As you can read in Romans 1, chapter 1, verse 20, where God says, or actually Paul writes, that God has put so much evidence in the universe, so people who do not believe have no excuse for that. They have to close their eyes not to see the evidence of God. And I will now show some of those evidences. What you see here is part of a DNA chain. It contains information about how our bodies are built. This information, you can see it is like a ladder. I have horizontal lines here. The information is stored there, and the spirals protect that sensitive information. But when the cell needs to read it, it has to separate the 2 spirals. Had it been that all chemical bonds were approximately the same in strength, then when you separate the chains, it could happen that the chain breaks rather than the middle of the information. The information on the molecules. And then we would get a false copy, false information on how to build the body, and we would not exist. But there are 3 strengths of chemical bonds, and their strengths are like 1 to 10 to 100. In the spiral, the strength is something like 100. And in the middle, where the information is stored, the strength is only 1/10. And this makes it possible for the cell to read the information in a proper way without destroying the information of how to build us. Who has decided that there should be 3 different strengths of chemical bonds? This is a simulation of the nickel nucleus that I once made. In an atomic nucleus, there are 2 kinds of particles. One of them is named neutron. It has no electrical charge. When a neutron is inside an atomic nucleus, it is a stable particle. Had it not been stable inside the nucleus, we would not exist. Then life would have been impossible in the universe. And the reason is that then the universe could only have one element, hydrogen. But as it is stable inside the nucleus, all the stuff that we are built from exists, like carbon, oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen, and so on. You name it. When a neutron comes out of the nucleus and becomes a free particle, it becomes unstable, and within about 10 minutes it decays. Had the neutron been stable outside the atomic nucleus, we would not exist. Then there would not exist any element at all. So our existence depends upon the neutron balances exactly at the limit of being stable and falling apart. Who decided that the neutron should have that property? If I write a picture like this, everyone knows that this should be an atom. For some strange reason, this picture has gone into the mind of people. It has not very much to do with what an atom really is. During 11 years, 100 years ago, one thought the atom to be like that. Before 1930, one had a totally different picture of an atom. And often, from 1924 and on, one knows that it is nothing like this. Had the atom been like this, we would not exist. So fortunately, this picture is wrong. Here is a picture that is more true. This is a specific state of the hydrogen atom. The electrons are everywhere at the same time. And they can go from here to here without passing the middle. Due to that, two things are possible. First of all, we are possible, but also free will is possible. And all this depends upon two theorems in theoretical physics. We have the ability to choose between good and evil. We have the ability to say yes to God or to say no. And this is due to the atom being like that and not in such a way. Who decided that the atom should have such strange properties? Be everywhere at the same time. This is the most known cat in the world, the cat of Schrödinger. It is a thought experiment. It was suggested by a physicist named Schrödinger to prove that the quantum theory was not correct. And the idea behind this is you have a box. Inside the box you put a cat, and you put a container with poison gas, and you put a random mechanism that can open the container. Of course, well, you put that in the box and close the lid. Of course, if the random mechanism goes on, then the cat dies because of the gas that will come out into the box. If the random mechanism doesn't fire, then the gas is still in the container and the cat is alive. What quantum physics says is that as long as you do not open the box and look, the cat is both dead and alive. It is not half dead, it is 100% dead and 100% alive. And Schrödinger thought this to be so ridiculous that this could not be true. Later experiments has shown that nature is exactly like that. This is the most shocking finding in physics during the last 100 years. The cat is both dead and alive until we open the box and look. So now we have day 7 of creation, and the Bible says that in day 7 God is relaxing. And now we are built into His image. It is now we who force the universe to go in specific states. When we look, we are forcing the universe to choose what is happening. Like when we open the box, we force the universe to choose between a dead cat and a cat that is alive. This is the most amazing thing of being the image of God. I will show one of the experiments that show this, that the nature is so strange, and it is an experiment so simple that every one of you can build it at home if you want to. It is named the Machtsehende interferometer. The equipment consists of a light source, a laser or a lamp, 4 mirrors. 2 of them are semi-transparent. This one is semi-transparent, and the one in the upper corner is semi-transparent. There are 2 ordinary mirrors also. When light goes from the light source and meets this mirror, it is split in 2 parts. One part goes upwards and one goes to the right. By the mirrors, the 2 beams meet each other again up there and are connected to one beam. For some reason, all light goes to one direction after the last mirror. And the reason comes from the wave nature of the light. So all light goes to the detector D1, no light to D2. And this is easily explained from the wave nature, because waves coming this way and waves coming this way extinguish each other in the vertical direction. Now one can change the light source So only one photon, one particle of light is sent at a time. The photons cannot be subdivided. So when the photon comes here, it has to choose between going upwards or going to the right. And this means that when the photon comes to the last mirror, it has no photon coming from the other direction to interact with. So one should expect half of them going to D1, half of them to D2. But this is not what happens. Still, everyone goes to D1. The only reasonable explanation is that the indivisible photon actually goes both ways. Then this way, dead cat, and this way, cat alive. Now I can try to see, does the photon really go two ways? So I can put detectors here and there, like this. When we activate the detectors, we can see we send a photon from the source, and we can see that at no occasion does the photon go to both detectors. It goes either to this detector or to that. It doesn't go both ways. But as soon as we look at it in this way, half of them go to D1 and half to D2. When we look, as soon as we know which way it goes, it behaves in one way. When we do not look, it behaves in a different way. So by looking, we forces the universe to decide which way the photon follows. When we do not look, it does what is forbidden. Here is a list of the first few elements. The figures tell how many particles the atomic nucleus is built from. And you can see that there are nuclei with one particle, 2, 3, 4. There is no one with 5 particles. There is one with 6, one with 7, no one with 8, and from 9 on, all numbers are possible. Had there been a stable nucleus consisting of 8 particles, we could not be here, because then the sun would not be shining steady for thousands of years. It would fluctuate violently, perhaps one day increasing its energy output by a factor of 100, and we would be burned to death. Next year, perhaps it would almost be extinguished and do not send any light at all, and the entire world would freeze to minus 100 degrees. Under such circumstances, we could not exist. But due to the non-existence of this, the sun is able to shine steadily, centuries after centuries, millennia after millennia, millions of years after millions of years. Who decided that this nucleus should not be stable? The sun and all other stars get its energy from this reaction. Two hydrogen atoms fuse together to form an atom named deuterium, and there is energy released. Two such can fuse together to form a helium atom, and more energy is released. In this way, the sun can be shining for millions and millions of years. And this, one could think of two helium atoms fusing together to form a beryllium. An atom with 8 particles. Had that been possible to be the stable nucleus, we would not exist. But this atom actually can exist during a very short time. During 10 to the minus 18 seconds. This is incredibly short. It is a millionth of a millionth of a millionth second. During this short time, something very important happens. When the universe was new, only 3 elements existed: hydrogen, helium, and lithium. This is not enough to build a human. It is not enough for life. All the other elements, like carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, were non-existent. During this very short time, something important can happen. If one looks at the energy of the combination of one beryllium-8, the very short-lived particle, and the helium-4, this combined energy is very slightly below the energy of carbon-12. And then something important happened, a quantum phenomenon named resonance. And during the short time of the existence of that particle, it increases in size, and if there happens to be a helium atom, it is inside the nucleus, and then the nucleus is not any longer a beryllium atom, it is a carbon atom. And this is stable. Had this energy been slightly lower, we would not exist. Had it been slightly higher, we would not exist either. Who decided that this energy should be just below the energy of carbon-12? But it doesn't end there. Had the combined energy of carbon-12 and helium-4 been lower, slightly lower than the energy of oxygen, then there would be no carbon left in the universe, and we could not exist. But now, this energy is slightly above the energy of oxygen. And this makes us possible. So there are two very delicate balances put into nature to make us possible. Who decided the positions of the energy levels? As I said, the elements from which we are built were created inside stars. Now imagine that a star has used up all its fuel. If it simply faded away, what the elements from which we are built would exist, but they would be buried deep in the center of dead stars. And it would be of no use. But this is not what happens. When a star dies, because it has consumed all its fuel, it explodes. And the content of the star is spread out into the space. This picture shows what is left from a star that exploded 6,000 years ago. And you can see that the contents of the stars are spread around a large area in the universe. Who decided that a dying star should explode and not just fade away? The universe is expanding, as I think you know. When the universe was new, the Bible says that it was in a state of chaos. Scientifically, one talks about the heat death. That is a thermodynamic term, and it means that nothing can happen. It is dead. But due to the expansion of the universe, it could leave the heat death. And the Bible talks about that too, if you look into the Hebrew text. And due to that, we can exist. So our existence relies upon the expansion of the universe to be at a suitable speed. If it were too fast, we would not exist. Then neither our galaxy or the sun or the earth would exist. And if it were too slow, we would not exist either. Then the universe would expand a bit and then turn back and go back to a backward Big Bang. But this does not happen. The expansion of the universe is balanced so that we will be possible. Who decided that the universe should expand at the right rate? If we could look at our galaxy from outside, it would look something like that. The sun is located in the edge of one of the spiral arms. There, the density of stars is dense enough for the Earth and the Sun solar system to form, but it is empty enough to prevent some other star from coming close to our Sun and through the Earth out of its orbit. When the galaxy rotates, the spiral arms should be wind up on the center. Had this happened, we could not exist, because then some star would have thrown the Earth away from its orbit. But the spiral arms are stable in the rotation. And this depends on the presence of something named dark matter. There is a suitable quantity of dark matter in the galaxy to keep it stable during millions of years and to keep the Sun and the Earth stable in their orbits. In the picture you can see a small circle. When you go out a dark evening with a clear sky, you can see approximately as far as that circle. So the universe is big, very big. Our galaxy is very big, and the universe, it is just one of billions other galaxies in the universe. Who decided that there should be dark matter in the galaxies? In our planetary system, there is the giant planet Jupiter. This year, in 1994, Jupiter collided with a comet named Shoemaker-Levy. At the impact, there was a fireball, and one was able to get a photo of that fireball. It is here. And I have drawn our Earth at the same scale here. You can see that the fireball is at least 2 times as large as the Earth. Had that comet collided with the Earth instead, we would not be here. That planet is put into our planetary system to protect us from comets. When comets come from outer space, Jupiter captures them and protects us. Jupiter has another purpose also, and that is to keep the planets, our Earth in particular, in its orbit. There is one substance that is more remarkable than all other, and that is water. Did you know that pure water is a deadly poison? If you drink it, you will die. In nature, the water reacts with the ground, and there are chemical reactions making the water get other elements in it, minerals, that takes away the poisonous properties of the water. Water should have boiled 150 degrees lower than the freezing point. Had it done so, we should not exist. All other molecules similar to water has a boiling point there, but water has a boiling point that is 250 degrees higher than it should be. Who decided that the water should boil at plus 100 degrees? Had it boiled at minus 150, the chemical processes in our bodies would be so slow that one generation would need tens of millions of years to pass, and we could not exist. When water freezes to ice, the ice is floating up on the surface. This is a very rare property. Most solid substances are heavier than the corresponding liquid, so they go to bottom. Had water been like that, ice would have gone to bottom, and the oceans would have been frozen from bottom and up, and we could not exist. Water has got this very uncommon property to make us possible. Who decided that? In nature and in our bodies, water balances at the most unstable point regarding to pH value between 6 and 8. If you have 1 drop of sulfuric acid and put that into 1,000 liters of water at pH 7, it changes to pH 6, 1 unit. If you do the same with water at a pH value of, say, 14, put 1 drop, it is enough to change 5 milliliters of water compared to 1,000 liters. Water in nature is balancing at the most unstable point. And this is caused by a set of very complicated reactions between water in nature and the rocks and the soil. Who decided that the water should balance there? Because if the water had been at some stable point, more than pH 8 or lower than pH 6, the reactions in our cells would not function and we could not exist. So our existence relies upon the water balancing at the most unstable point it has. It is like balancing something on your hand. Yeah. God could do that. I cannot. Such a strange substance should be rare, perhaps like gold, but it is not. It is the most common substance on the surface of the earth. And thus, we are possible. There is one element also that is very strange and necessary for our existence, and that is carbon. Carbon itself, together with other elements, can form more chemical compounds than all other elements together. When I started studying chemistry, about 500,000 compounds of carbon were known, and each week some 1,000 new are found. So you can calculate yourself how many there are known now, and in a week there will be 1,000 more. This makes it possible for carbon compounds to have all kinds of chemical properties needed for the cells and the body to function. Who decided that there should be such an element? Very small changes in the constants of nature would make carbon impossible. And then we would not exist. The conclusion of all this is either there exists a God who has created all this with a purpose, and that the purpose is we, or, as the atheists try to say, there exists an infinite number of universes, all with different values of natural constants. And we could, of course, only observe a universe where we are possible. So the question is, which of those alternatives is the correct one? Can we answer that question at all? The atheist said we cannot, but the first is the most probable. But it is not, and I will show why. I will show that this atheist view is impossible, and that this, that is the evidence for this. First of all, one should know that this is the first one. It is pure speculation. Only thinking due to wish. One can think about the multiple universes as sheets stacked upon each other. And the idea is that they have no connection with each other, so from one cannot observe any other. There is no evidence at all that there exists anything like that. And there is a very serious problem with it, and it is the uncertainty relation by Heisenberg. One can express it mathematically like that. What this relation says is that all those different universes are not flat sheets. They have to be corrugated. And how corrugated they are depends upon the size of that constant. And if all possible values exist, then some of the universes would be so corrugated so it would swallow all the others. And then we could not exist. So, as we are here, this cannot be true. This is pure fantasy. So, are there any evidence, positive evidence for a creator? Yes, there are. When you come up with things like we have very good eyes, the atheist says that depends upon the evolution. The ones with bad eyes have died away. So I have been looking for things that cannot be explained by evolution, if there were one. When a human dies, there is a pulse of a substance named endorphin released in the brain. This is pure mercy. Because what this does is that all pain disappears. There is a feeling of happiness, a feeling of love, a feeling of calm, a feeling of expectation. This cannot have anything to do with evolution. It has to be put there by an intention to a pure mercy. But I do think it has one more purpose. I think that this pulse also releases the me from the body. But that I cannot prove. This is only what I believe it to be. Another is that in our brain there is a certain part that is there for us to feel the presence of God. And if you stimulate that electrically, you feel God is here. And of course, it is like you can stimulate other parts and you can hear bells ringing and such. But this part of the brain cannot have any evolutionary reason. It has to be put there by God for us to be able to feel His presence. Finally, we have the Bible. As I told you, the Bible was what made me believe in God. I have spent 1 month to study the first 8 verses, the Hebrew of the 8 first verses of the Bible, and found very intriguing evidence. The Hebrew is not like most Western languages. In Hebrew, each word has at least 5 or 10 meanings. So, the first verse in the Bible could be translated as, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. But it could also be translated, when time started, God, Trinity, created out of nothing space and matter. The word terra in Spanish has only one meaning. In Swedish, the corresponding word jord has several meanings, and in Hebrew it has at least a dozen meanings. It means the earth, where we live. It means the ground. It means an area of land. It means dust. So put everything together, it is the same as matter. So one can say, instead of God created the earth, God created matter. And it is, one can go through the entire 8 first verses and see that there is a hidden message. There are hidden messages in the Bible, as the Bible itself says. In Matthew, the evangelist tells that when the family, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus returned from Egypt, they went to Nazareth because the prophet had said that Messiah should be named a Nazarene. People from Nazareth had bad reputation at that time, so it was not a compliment exactly. When one look into the prophecies in the Old Testament, one finds that no prophet has said that. So how could Matthew think that it was there? And the reason is very simple. In the biblical Hebrew, there are only consonants. So instead of Nazarene, there was the characters N, S, R. If you go to Isaiah, you find in the prophecy about Messiah that a twig should come from the roots of Yishai. That word, translated by twig, in Hebrew is nezer. That consists of the three consonants M, S, R, as it is written in the Bible. And Matthew realized that if one changes the characters from E to A, E, it would be Nazarene. He had found a hidden message in the Bible. And the Bible is full of hidden messages. And one hidden message is that the entire description of the development of the universe is in the first 8 verses. There are 11 facts that are in the Hebrew text that were not known when the Bible was written. So they must have been put there by someone, by God. Of course, this could be just a coincidence. So I have looked upon 28 different creation stories from different parts of the world. From South America, North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia. And I tried to find the corresponding knowledge in any of those. The light squares here show what I have found when I am reading very, very kind to them. Each column here is one creation story. And you can see that no one has more than 4 facts that are correct. There are some that does not have even 1 fact. And the Bible has 11. So I have made this graph about number of facts found to the right here and number of stories that contain a correct fact. And you can see 3 do not have even 1 correct fact. The curve here is exactly what you would expect from pure chance. So this shows that all those 28 stories are pure fantasies. The Bible is outstanding. It deviates from all the other. And that is only from the first 8 verses. Combining with the rest of the Genesis story, the Bible, one can say with a certainty of, let's express it like this, the probability for the Bible to appear to have this knowledge by chance is less than 1 in 500 billions. So we can say with very, very great certainty that the Bible is the Word of God and that all other creation, all other sacred scriptures, so-called sacred scriptures, are pure human fantasies. Now, this is not in the book. This is in the second book that deals with Bible and science. So the conclusion is that the universe is created with a purpose, and that you and I are the purpose of the universe. And if we can read in the Bible, in the very first part of the Bible, that God has a message to us, then we should read the rest of it. Perhaps He has more to tell us than the first page. We have the ability to say yes to Jesus or say no. The purpose of God is love. Love to each other love to God in the first hand. And we are going to be the bride of Christ once, if we say yes. God bless you if you say yes to Jesus. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, profesor Allan. Entramos a una segunda etapa. Me presento, mi nombre es Jorge Montero. Yo estudié ingeniería industrial, soy padre de 2 hijos, esposa, empresario y apasionado por este tipo de temas. Entonces abrimos este espacio donde está el doctor Allan y ahorita vamos a tener la posibilidad de hacer preguntas referente al tema. Este es un espacio tipo conversatorio, donde si hay algún tipo de duda referente al tema, pues podamos utilizar la oportunidad que tenemos, realizarlas, poder tener alguna respuesta del doctor en este momento.
We still have 40 minutes for questions.
¿Sí? Ok, listo. Tenemos aquí algunos papelitos. Si hay alguna persona que quiera hacer la pregunta en nombre propio, también es posible, pero si quieren escribirla, eso de pronto nos puede ayudar. Exacto. ¿Listo? Entonces aquí tenemos 2. ¿Tú la vas a escribir? ¿Tú la quieres escribir o...? Listo. ¿La haces en español? ¿En inglés? Dale. Entonces, aquí utilizaríamos la traducción simultánea. Entonces, me quieres hacer la pregunta en inglés, tú nos ayudas con la traducción y con la respuesta. Dale.
Okay, so in first place, thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. And I have a few questions. That is, why are you trying to combine religious and science? What is important for you that all of us believe both in science and God? And the second part of my question, that is more conclusion, is that you say there are clues in the universe and in the earth that disapproves the evolution theory. But are also clues in our body that prove the evolution theory. The final part of the vertebral spine is just as similar as the monkey's tail. So in that case, the clues that prove the evolution theory, what are you saying about that?
Yes, actually, the evolution theory is not one theory. It is at least 2 theories. First, it is a theory of how different species are related to each other. The other is a mechanism made by Darwin telling that the survival of the fittest will cause this evolution to take place. That evolution has taken place is very obvious for different reasons. And the second part has no evidence at all. The mechanism probably is something very different. It could be some natural mechanism that we do not know yet, but it could also be that God has gone directly into the species, changed the DNA, and a new species has appeared. We cannot know that, but we can know from anatomy that we are related to all mammals. We have 7 parts in our neck, 7 bones. All other mammals also have that. The hedgehog, the human, the giraffe. This cannot be the optimal number for all species. So this shows, or at least indicates, that we are related to each other. There are also the DNA evidence. We can look upon the DNA of a person, and from that we can tell that this is the father, this is the mother, this is grandfather, and so on. And we can go further to many atheistic, the annoying of many atheists. From DNA, one has found that all humans origin from one woman, and all humans origin from one man. We cannot prove that they were living at the same time, but there is nothing telling anything against it. So we could conclude from DNA evidence that Adam and Eve have been real. And we can go further and look upon upon the animals, the mammals, and see how they are related to each other. And we can go further and further back and see how all species are related to each other, back to billions of years ago. The second part, or the second theory of evolution, the mechanism, has no evidence whatsoever. There is not. We are not the result of any chance. We are the result of a creation.
¿Listo? Ya va, o sea, creo que
Sí.
iba tu pregunta y después
Sí,
seguirías
cómo
tú
no.
entonces.
Quisiera que el doctor explicara brevemente para mi conocimiento, porque yo sé que la mayoría debe saber en qué consiste el fenómeno o la teoría del Big Bang, y cuáles serían los argumentos para desvirtuarlo.
Yeah, of course, ask that publicly. No, I could not hear the question because I had one question in my ear. You translated the question. I did not understand that. Sorry. Could you repeat it? Because I tried to listen to both of you at the same time.
Quisiera que el doctor brevemente explicara en qué consiste el fenómeno del Big Bang y cuáles serían los argumentos para poder desvirtuarlo.
Okay. The Big Bang theory starts, it tells that the universe started as a very tiny part of space, a very tiny point, about 14 billion years ago. Since then, the universe has expanded and is the size that it is now. There are evidence for that. The first evidence is the expansion of the universe. If you calculate that backwards, you will find that the Earth appears to be in the center of the universe. A galaxy that is 1 million light years away, well, that is too small, 1 billion light years away, moves away from us at a certain speed. One that is 2 billion years away moves at the double speed. And this is the same in all directions. So if you calculate backwards, you find that all galaxies were here 14 billion years ago. This is the first evidence. And that was a shock to the atheists, because they had considered that the universe had been forever. So this tells that there have been a starting point, exactly like the Bible says. Also, when you look upon the number of different kinds of atoms in the universe, you find that 92% of all atoms are hydrogen atoms. The rest 8% is essentially helium. And this is exactly the quantities you get from the Big Bang theory. The Big Bang tells that there should be 92% hydrogen and about 8% helium. And this is what one observed. And it also tells how much of other elements there should be. There are two kinds of hydrogen. Hydrogen with one particle and with two particles. And there is helium with 3 particles and 4 particles. There is lithium with 6 and 7 particles. And all the quantities of those are exactly what they should be according to what they should be if the Big Bang had existed. So this is evidence. And third, one has that flash of light that filled the universe when the age was 300,000 years and the atoms were formed. Then that light is what we can still see. We can see the rests of that light when we point our instruments out into the universe. And that obviously is the same light as the Bible said, "Let there be light." So there is much evidence for the Big Bang theory. And that is a shock for the atheists. They need some way to get around this problem. And they have tried. They have tried that the universe is pulsating, so it expands, it stops, and then falls back again, and starts over again. It has been shown that this is not possible, to their great annoyance. So they have tried to come up with other fantasies.
Ok. Muchas gracias. Creo que serías tú. ¿Alguien más después de él? ¿No? Ok. ¿Quieres hacerla en inglés?
So, at the beginning of your presentation, you said something that caught my attention, and it is that you have written 2 books, this one and the second part.
Yes.
And in the second part, you said that it focuses mostly in proving that the creation of the universe was made by the Judeo-Christian God specifically.
Yes.
And not any other God.
And there is no other God.
Okay. At the end of your presentation, you explained to us how the Bible matches with the scientific facts.
Yes.
Can you tell us if maybe is there any other form of claiming that the creation is the Judeo-Christian God besides the Bible and not any other gods, like the ones that you say from Aram or any other gods?
I have seen no other scripture that contains that information. And as I told you, I have looked into 28. So the Bible is unique. And one can read more things in the Bible and match it with what we know scientifically. But one cannot say that this is not a coincidence. But when it comes to the Genesis story, it cannot be a coincidence. It has to be real information given by God to someone who wrote it down. And it is written in such an ingenious way that even before the knowledge we have today was known, the Bible could be understood. Imagine that the Bible had been written in a way that we write our equations describing the universe. no one would understand it, not when it was written, and not now, because the symbols might have been different. But the Bible is written so that it could be understood through all times, and yet the hidden message has been there all the time to be revealed when the time is right. It is needed now more than ever earlier because people are moving away from God, as the Bible says that they will do in the last of times.
Bien. ¿Alguien más quiere hacer algún tipo de pregunta? Yo tengo varias.
Here, second one.
Okay. Listo. Dale.
I was wondering, well, this is an interpretation of the creation scientifically, right?
Yes.
So, I don't know if maybe there has been any scientific interpretation of the last part of the Bible, of the Revelations.
Yes.
So, can you maybe elaborate a little about that?
Well, I can give you a riddle. When you read chapter 21 in the Revelation story, it tells about the New Jerusalem. And it tells that this will be a cube. It has a side 2,220 kilometers wide and 2,220 kilometers in that direction and 2,220 kilometers upwards. A huge city, a huge cube. If you would put it on the earth and have one part of it here, it would reach up to the border of the United States. So this is a really huge cube. And the Bible says it is surrounded by a high wall. And the Bible also tells the height of the wall. The wall has a height of 70 meters. How, if one tries to draw that, the wall looks ridiculously low. I will try to show a picture of what that wall would look like. Here I have tried to make a picture as it is described in the Bible. This is the wall. But to make it visible at all in the picture, I have had to make it 19 kilometers high. And still it looks like a ridiculously low wall. So how could the Bible say that this is a high wall, 70 meters? If I had drawn it in the correct scale, you wouldn't see it. There is something hidden there. I will let you think about that. I will not give you answer now, but if you cannot sleep in the nights, you are welcome to write a mail to me and I will explain, because there is a hidden message there also. The wall really is really high. We just misunderstand what the Bible is saying. So think about that. And also think about another riddle. Why had Israel 12 sons? So there were 12 families in the Israel population and tribes, yes. And why had Jesus 12 apostles? This is connected to that riddle.
¿Alguien más? ¿Está bien?
Sí, pues hay dos preguntas, una con respecto al tiempo en el que Dios escoge a Adán, ¿sí? El tiempo que recorrió de escoger a Adán y ya darle vida, ¿sí? Y el tiempo más o menos establecido en el recorrido que ustedes han hecho con la investigación en que ya él muere en el espíritu.
Perdón, muere en el espíritu.
Sí.
Could you repeat the question? Once
He
more.
wants to know which is the time you had, right? Way back, the time between God to choose him, and the time right after.
Yeah. As far
with regards to your reason.
Yeah, as far as we know, the DNA Adam and the DNA Eve were living about 200,000 years ago or something like that. There is, you had two questions. Was
¿Eran
that?
dos preguntas en uno?
No,
It's the same.
Yeah.
ese es uno.
That's one. That's
Yeah.
the first time before we went into that, and right after Aiden's staying alive.
Yeah. And as you know, or I think you know, that St. Paul says in the New Testament that due to the sin of Adam, death appeared in the universe. So how could it be that the dinosaurs were dead since 95 million years when Adam committed his sin? This is one of the questions that I have been thinking about how to explain that, because God said the creation was good, but is it good if an entire species is wiped away? Well, if you look at the Hebrew text, you find that the word translated with good also means beautiful, wonderful, all those things like impressive. And even with the dead dinosaurs, of course, the word is impressive. But not only that, let's go back. Let's go back to the cat of Schrödinger. The cat is both dead and alive until we open the box and have a look. Imagine that we find a dead cat. It did not die when we opened the lid. It died perhaps half an hour earlier. So when we do something, when we observe, we influence not only the present, we influence past times. there is an equipment named quantum eraser that is so easy, so you could buy things in the hobby shops and build one. With that equipment, you can let something happen, you let a certain time pass, and then you take the event away from the history so that it never took place. We are able to influence not only the future but also the past. So when Adam and Eve committed his sin, we can see in the Bible that God observed. He asked, "Did you eat of that tree?" And when he observed, and the observation was seen, then death entered the universe, not only in the future, but also in all past times.
Y hay otra cosa que me llama mucho la atención con respecto a la Biblia, el escrito como tal. Ustedes, según lo que está mostrando, hay mucha confiabilidad en lo que se ha escrito y que se ha mantenido en eso, pero también dice usted que hay muchas cosas ocultas ahí. De pronto en la transcripción que se hizo no pudo haber variado, y ustedes no han descubierto que se ha variado bastante la información en lo que tenemos al día de hoy.
Definitely, there has been changes in the Bible. The oldest version of the Genesis story that we have was written around year 600. This is the oldest manuscript. There are small parts of it in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but not the entire story. And when you look upon the different hand scriptures, there are all kinds of changes. There are writing errors, and there are correction of writing errors. There are pieces that are taken away, and there are pieces that are added. And not until around year 1000 there was a standard version of the Old Testament, the Masoret scripture. So there are different versions, but if God has put a hidden message, He makes sure that this message is not taken away by such changes.
Tengo varias, pero quisiera hacer al menos dos. La primera es si, desde tu experiencia, crees que la evidencia de ajuste fino del universo por sí sola pueda llevar a entender a una persona sobre el hecho de un creador. Si la evidencia que es presentado hoy por sí sola puede llevar a encender a una persona sobre el hecho de un creador o llegar a tu misma conclusión.
I think so, yes. I have testimonies from people when I have been talking about this, and when people who have been reading my web pages and the books, that they have come to understand. I don't remember where I have told what, because I have been speaking at so many. So if I have said this already, you have to apologize. When I started my research studies, my supervisor, Professor Allan Emrén, in physical chemistry at the University of Göteborg, he was a non-believer. He knew very soon that I believed in Jesus Christ. Sometimes he even made some little joke about that in his lectures. Nothing evil or something. Just a little funny thing. A few years later, it was time for him to have a sabbatical year. Can you imagine what happened? He went to Jerusalem to spend 1 year in a monastery there. When he died, and he died too soon, he was only 60, he was found at the side of the road in his car, sitting dead. He had a heart attack while driving. He was driving towards a monastery close to the city Uppsala in Sweden.
Sorry, the city what?
He was driving towards a monastery close to the city Uppsala in Sweden when he died. And many of my colleagues have said, "Oh, wow, so God exists." So the purpose of this book is it is apologetic. Actually, one of the publishers to which I sent it when I had written it said, "It is an excellent book, a very good popular science. Had it not been so apologetic, we would have taken it immediately. But now we cannot do that."
¿Alguien más tiene alguna otra pregunta? Yo tengo otra. Sí.
If anyone of you come up with some questions later, do not hesitate to write a mail to me. I spend about one afternoon a week answering mails about such things.
Mi pregunta es,
How you made?
Oh, I will bring that up. There you have it.
Mi siguiente pregunta es, en una parte de tu libro, cuando hablas acerca de la verdad, hablas acerca de las proyecciones de una teoría con respecto a las observaciones que podemos encontrar. Entonces, ¿qué pasa cuando las observaciones no coinciden con las proyecciones de la teoría? Entonces, hay algunos científicos que buscan o proponen otro tipo de elementos para que la teoría siga siendo estable, esperando que en un futuro se pueda demostrar. Pero realmente, ¿en qué momento puede haber un cambio de paradigma?
First of all, if a theory does not match the observation, then the observation is always right. In this way, one came up with quantum theory, with the theory of relativity, because the observations didn't match what was found by observation. It has not always been like that. Earlier, one thought that the observations are corrupted, the theories are the right. And many people think so too, at least emotionally. At least one Nobel Prize has been hindered by people knowing from their theory that this could not be correct, and not until the person had died, it was proven that all those who knew by theory were wrong.
creo que algo más, no sé si alguien quiere hacer alguna pregunta adicional, y no creo que daríamos por terminado el conversatorio de hoy. Si alguien al final se quiere acercar y hacer alguna pregunta personal, creo que hay una hojita por ahí, si nos quieren dejar sus nombres, sus datos y enviarnos de pronto información sobre alguna otro tipo de conferencias. Y acá está el libro también del profesor, si alguien quiere adquirirlo se puede acercar a Susana y con gusto lo puede adquirir. Muchas gracias a todos por venir.
Gracias.